So what happens when an ancient practice like divination smashes into the cutting-edge world of artificial intelligence? That's exactly what we're digging into today, the rise of the AI tarot reader. It's this new kind of digital oracle that's just, well, taking over our social media feeds and kind of changing the way we look for answers. If you've been on TikTok at all lately, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You see these super polished AI-generated videos, mystical figures promising you the absolute world if you just type yes in the comments. And look, this isn't just some niche corner of the internet anymore. It's a huge, fast-growing trend where millions of people are turning to algorithms for guidance. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at why this is all happening right now. Then, we'll peek under the hood and see how this tech actually works. We're also going to weigh the good against the bad, explore some of the hidden risks to our own thinking, and finally, ask the big question: what does all this mean for our search for meaning? Okay, first up, the big question. Why is AI tarot just exploded? I mean, what's really driving this mashup of ancient wisdom and super modern tech? So before we go any further, let's get on the same page. What is an AI tarot reading? Well, basically, it uses machine learning to analyze and interpret the symbolism of tarot cards. You ask it a question, and it uses natural language processing to comb through massive databases and spit out an answer that sounds a lot like what a human reader would say. So who's using this stuff? Mostly younger, tech-savvy folks, Gen Z and millennials who grew up online. And listen, tarot apps aren't new, but the huge leap in generative AI has caused this massive surge in just the last couple of years. And the appeal? It's pretty obvious, right? It's instant, it's often free, it's available 24/7, and you can ask really personal stuff without worrying about another person judging you. All right, so how does a machine actually play Mystic? You know, the process might be a little less magical than you think. It's really just a simple three-step dance. You give it a prompt, a question, a worry, whatever. Then the AI scans its library, which is pretty much the entire internet's worth of tarot content. We're talking blogs, books, forums, you name it. And finally, it uses its language model to stitch together a response that sounds insightful, all based on the patterns it found in all that data. And this brings us to the most important point of all. The AI isn't understanding the cards. It has zero intuition, no life experience, no empathy. It's just a really, really advanced pattern matching machine. It's copying the language of a tarot reading, not the actual human connection behind it. Which kind of makes you wonder, right? If it's not a person and it's not some spiritual guide, what are you actually plugging into? Are you tapping into the collective knowledge of the internet? Or are you really just talking to a mirror that reflects existing data back at you? This leads us right into the heart of the great debate around AI tarot. And honestly, there are some really good arguments on both sides. What's so wild is how every single promise seems to have a built-in peril. I mean, take access. Being able to get a reading 24/7 is awesome, but it also creates a real risk of dependency. Or objectivity. Sure, the AI isn't biased by human feelings, but that also means it has absolutely no empathy, no soul. It can pull from huge databases for accuracy, but it's also famous for just making stuff up. And finally, that privacy it offers, it comes at the cost of any real human connection. This quote I saw from a user on Reddit really just hits the nail on the head. For so many people, tarot is all about connection and discipline and storytelling. It's an art. And when you strip away that human element, you kind of risk turning it into just another piece of digital content to scroll through. So moving past the philosophical stuff, there are some very real, very practical risks that come with outsourcing our self-reflection to a machine. And it really all comes down to how our brains are wired. This right here is probably the single most important thing to remember about generative AI. It's designed to sound fluent and totally convincing. It'll state something that's completely false with the exact same authority it uses to state a fact. There's a name for this, actually. It's called hallucination. And this is a perfect example. Researchers asked an AI to write a historical paragraph, and it just invented a US president out of thin air, Edmund G. Harrington. It didn't just make up his name, it created his policies, his political party, it even made up fake academic sources to back it all up. Everything looked plausible, but it was all completely fake. So, how does that apply to tarot? Well, a researcher named Dana O'Driscoll put it to the test. She asked ChatGPT for a reading from her own oracle deck. The AI then started confidently drawing cards that didn't even exist in that deck. It just
made them up. And when it finally did pull a real card, it got the meaning wrong. And the whole time, it kept insisting it was accurate.
This all leads to this critical point. The danger isn't the AI itself. It's how we decide to use it. If we treat it like a tool for reflection, we're in the driver's seat. But when we start just accepting what it says is gospel, we're doing something called cognitive offloading. It's just a fancy way of saying we're letting a tool do our thinking for us. And that's the real danger, making big life choices based on confidently delivered nonsense.
So, where does all this leave us? I mean, as this technology gets more and more woven into our lives, how should we think about it? Well, the general idea seems to be treat it like a tool, not a guru. Let's look at a practical example. Say you ask, should I quit my job? The AI might pull the Tower card and give you the super dramatic, scary interpretation about sudden disaster. A human reader, though, they'll use that same card to start a conversation. They'll ask, what feels unstable? What structures at work just aren't sustainable anymore? See the difference? The AI gives you drama. A human helps you find the context. This quote, which totally blew up online, just frames the bigger picture so perfectly. It brings up this really fundamental question about which parts of our humanity we're okay with automating. Are we going to use technology to free ourselves up to be more creative and spiritual, or are we going to outsource those things and leave ourselves with the chores?
So what's the bottom line here? First, think of AI Tarot as a prompt, not an oracle. It can be a fun way to learn card meanings, but just remember, it has no nuance, no empathy. Second, the most powerful tool in any reading is you, your gut, your experience, your own critical mind. And finally, just remember that real insight comes from the struggle that makes you think, not from some easy answer that lets you stop.
And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. In this rush for instant, easy, frictionless answers from our devices, what are we quietly losing? What's the real cost of disconnecting from each other in what is, the most human search of all, the search for meaning?